So welcome to a new patch video series with the Model D, and this is how this is going to go. So first I will show you the final result, so maybe you can copy the settings, and then we will build the patch from the ground up. So everything is timelined, so you can listen to the final patch, keep watching, or maybe move on to the next one. Now we will always start from a default patch like this one, like the one you have on the screen. Now you already listened to the first patch, so let's break it down. Okay, so everyone has their own version of Stranger Things. This is just my own, right? And you can of course shift the sound to whatever you want to. We're not gonna spend 2 hours just building 10 patches. So I'm gonna go kind of I don't want to say fast, but I'm just gonna go and do it. So what I want to do 3 oscillators. So I'm gonna go volume up on the 2, on the 3, volume up on the 2, and volume up on the 1. And I'm gonna turn them on. Now, of course, this is gonna give you that kind of sound because we are using the envelopes just like this. We are cutting a lot of frequencies. Now, in the case of this one, what I want to do, I want to get some high frequencies and some middle ones and some low ones. I want to create kind of go abroad the whole frequency spectrum. So on this one, I'm going to select 4 foot. On this one, I'm going to keep it on 8. And on this one, I'm going to leave it on 16. This is going to be the low. Now, one thing that you need to be aware when you build something, and for now, I'm just going to go with the frequency up. I'm going to play a key. And I'm going to add a little bit of sustain right here and a little bit of decay. So right now we are listening to the first one. I'm going to go to the second one. Notice that they sound a little bit detuned. So you always need to make sure that they are in tune. And you can turn off this one and try this one. That was detuned. So there, I believe there is fine. Now I'm gonna leave it off for now. And for now, we're gonna go and talk about what we are gonna do right here. So I'm gonna go all the way down on the decay. Now this is an ARP, so we shouldn't have a super long decay just like we had before. Now this one, the loud decay, when it's on, is gonna use this as a release, but I want to turn it off. But on the filter decay, I'm just gonna leave that tail go on. So right here on the attack, I'm just gonna do a little bit of attack, just a tiny bit to avoid the click. So on the milliseconds, I'm gonna go to maybe 10 or maybe below the 200s, something like that, not something super long. And on the sustain, I'm gonna go all the way down and I'm gonna go maybe to 1. So in terms of the filters, I want to keep this one on right like that. This one, I'm gonna just turn it off, but this one, it's gonna be on. Now, if we set both on, it's going to be a lot brighter. So I don't want to be that bright. Now, of course, the magic happens when we start to move the cut of frequencies. And this is going to do it by the amount of contour. So if I go up on the amount of contour and go low on the cut of frequencies, it's going to go all the way down. And we play something, we have a click sound because the envelope is not doing anything. So I'm just going to do maybe 600 on that. Let me just double check. 600 on the decay. I believe that one sounds fine. And I'm going to go right here and to the sustain and put it on 2 and something. All right, so now if we do something, it sounds kind of sounds like an ARP. We could use this for an ARP. So I'm going to do a little bit of resonance, not too much. And right now the magic will happen when we start bringing the other oscillators. And I'm going to bring the clip so we can listen to it. Right, so it sounds cool, and we are using 1 oscillators. We are on 4 foot. Now if I bring the second one, we can hear that it sounds cool. Now remember that maybe offsetting this oscillator a little bit from the first one, is going to give you a bigger sound. Maybe that's just too much. Maybe something like that. Right, just offset the oscillators just a little bit, the pitch. And if I bring the last one is going to be the lows. And on this one, the same deal. If we remove the pitch too much, it's too much. You're just going to put it right there. Right, so this is the lows, this is the mids, and this is the highs. What you could do is just do both highs and this ones. Now, the thing right now is that we are using all saws, and that's fine. But I just want to shift the the waveforms a little bit better, a little bit more, so we can have a more complex sound. Notice that we get a lot more lows, a lot more body, and this one is just lows, but I'm gonna put it in a narrow pulse. Now, the magic is gonna start to happen with the amount of contour. If I go down, we get, that the beginning of that. Same thing with the decay. If you go more decay, the sound is just gonna grow. Now, of course, everything sounds not that good when we are not using effects. So I'm just gonna start bringing effects. So I'm gonna use the RV6, which is one of a cheap reverb that you can get anywhere. And I'm gonna use a Hall. And I'm gonna maybe leave everything on almost 50%. And sounds cool. Now I'm gonna bring the chorus. The chorus is just gonna make it wider. So this is a more guitar chorus, and it's a stereo chorus. And as soon as I bring it, we can hear that it goes wide. Now I'm gonna go low rate because I don't care much about the movement on the sides. What I want to do is just use it as a stereo enhancer. This has bass and treble, so we can boost a little bit of that. And it sounds cool. Now, again, if we go up on the amount of contour, and we can go up on the decay, we get that vibe. Now what we could do as well, we can bring a delay. Now I'm going to use mostly this delay because it's a cheap delay and everyone can get this one. It's a good delay. It's a very good delay for a very cheap price. This one is an expensive delay. Now, but this one is a very specific delay. This even has a preamp. So as soon as I play something, and maybe let me bring that Stranger Things, and I turn it on, it's just going to boost everything. And it is because it has a preamp built in. And it's not only that, it's just going to give us that kind of a, warm kind of a sound. Now, I'm using it because I kind of have it and I like it. So in the case of the repetitions, we don't need a lot. But notice that the repetitions are not super bright. They're just rather dark because this is a tape echo. Same on this one. If I grab this delay and I use digital, the repetitions are going to be super kind of a way in between of the sound. So a tape or an analog delay is just going to stay behind of the main sound a little bit more. So this one, of course, is going to give you a little bit of depth, which is what we want in this case. Now the chorus is going to, or the reverb, it's just going to make it more lush, and the stereo will just make it bigger. And that's it. That's the sound. Now, remember that at the beginning it starts like super quiet. And if you get a click, you need to move the attack. Notice that we get a click. If you move the attack just a little bit, not too much, until you get rid of the click, that's going to fix the problem. And as we go up, we can grow on the amount of contour, but we can also grow on the decay. And the sound's going to start to grow. Now remember that you could change the range right here. Maybe we could use a 4 and this is going to give us a different sound. Alright, so that's the sound. Okay, so let's just break it down. Now, we want that kind of an organ sound. Now, you can create this with maybe an FM synthesizer, maybe the Op6 from Korg with the sine waves. You can use sine waves and create whatever you want. But in this case, we don't have sine waves on the Moog, so we can use a triangle. Now, I'm going to turn it on and go all the way up, maybe up to right there, to 7. So if I play something, right, it's going to sound pretty dull. Now I'm going to go up on the range. I'm going to select an 8 foot. So that's a little bit better. Now we are cutting a lot of frequencies, and in this case, since we want that organ sound, we want no modulation. We want to kind of the full spectrum. So we're going to go all the way down, and we can maybe do a little bit of resonance. Now the contour is going to be all the way down, so we are not going to be using this. So this ones, I'm going to keep them on. I want to get a little bit more bright. Now, in the case of the decay, again, I'm just going to leave them off because that organ has no sustain. If you want to add a little bit of sustain, you can do that. But in this case, I don't want this sustain. Now, I'm going to leave the decay around, maybe at middle, and the sustain all the way up. We are not using this, so we get something like that. Okay, right? So it's just pretty dull. Now we need to make this better. Now, since we have 3 oscillators, we can do a little bit more. Now, right now we are just going on the 2, I believe it's right here, is 8 foot. So we want a little bit more frequencies because the triangle is just a lonely thing. Now I'm gonna go right there to the second one, and I'm gonna bring it down, bring it up, and I'm gonna do 2 because we can. This is already gonna give you something. Now, of course, we are on saw. I'm going to bring it a triangle. We want all triangles. And now it's starting to sound like that organ. Right, so cool. So we can even do more. So we are doing mids, we are doing super highs, so we can bring some lows. So I'm going to keep it on 16 and I'm going to turn this on. And of course, we are going to go to a triangle. They're going to be all triangles. And then again, this is going to give you a little bit more. Now, of course, when you do this, you need to kind of decide who is going to be the kind of the fundamental kind of a frequency. It's going to be the high one. It's going to be the mid one. This is the high one. It's going to be the mid one. So in my case, it's going to be the mid one. And I'm just going to leave this ones right there. And maybe this, I want a little bit more of the first oscillator. Right. So what we can do while we play, we can do a little bit of vibrato. I'm going to go to oscillator and then modulation, and I'm just going to turn this one on. So with this one, we just can, do an LFO on the frequencies. So I'm going to keep it all the way up right on this one. And we're going to be using right here the LFO. So if I bring some amount right here, some LFO rate, maybe like that, as soon as I play something, it's gonna play like that. Now you need to make sure that your mod wheel is all the way down. In my case, it was all the way up. But what you can do, you can handle it from there. And notice that we are not using any of the effects yet. Now, to get this organ sound, if you think about this, back in the day, with the Rhodes, they went through different amps, and they used pedals for this. So in this case, I'm just going to use a little bit of reverb just to add something extra, because right now it just sounds super dull. And I'm going to bring maybe the tone, and I'm using a spring reverb, because if they use amps. The amps back in the day, they had springs. So using a spring reverb sounds like a good idea, right? So in the case of time, I'm just going to bring it down. I don't want a super long reverb. In the case of tone, I want it dark. And the level, I'm just going to leave it somewhere in between. So I'm using a key step, and sometimes by mistake, I'm just, hitting the mod wheel. So that's the defect you get with that MIDI keyboard. So of course we can use a little bit of chorus just to make it a little bit more just kind of wide. And I'm gonna keep the rate low, but I'm just gonna go up on the width and up on the intensity. And this is, and it's gonna give us that sound. Now, remember that back in the day, they used pedals. So we can even use a little bit of overdrive or pedal or overdrive just to get a little bit more, just like we did with the bass. So with this one, and actually we did it with the first patch, with the Stranger Things one. That one had a preamp, so it's adding a little bit of saturation. So we're gonna do the same thing with this one. So this one, it's not a distortion. It's kind of an overdrive or kind of a boost. So this is a clone. I wouldn't say it's a clone. It's just pretty much like that. It's kind of a clone. It's a overdrive from the Synthwave. So yeah, it has like two different types of voices. This is going to play with the EQ. So as soon as I turn it on, of course, we need to change some of the settings because it's going to be like. It already sounds super cool. But it's super distorted. Now, in this case, I'm just gonna go right here. I'm gonna leave the volume maybe right there. Now the drive, I'm gonna go down on the drive and maybe go up on the tone so we can get a brighter tone. And again, I'm just touching the mod wheel. Now, this has two voices. If I go to the other side, to the right side, it's gonna sound like that. In this case, I don't want that. I'm gonna keep it on the other side of the voice. So it's gonna be a bit smoother. Now, of course, I cannot play keyboards like a king. I can play a guitar like a king, but maybe not the keyboards. So I'm just gonna bring a clip. It's just gonna sound a lot, just much better. Now, maybe I'm doing a little bit too much volume. Now, when you use an overdrive pedal, or just any kind of pedal, you need to think of how much you're feeding from the synthesizer. Because if you do too much, this is going to start to clip. Sometimes it's, something that you want. Sometimes it's not. It already sounds super, like that organ we want. I'm going to make a little bit more reverb. Right, super cool. We get that organ type of sound. Now also remember that we are doing this to add a little bit of vibrato right here. So if you have a coarse pedal, what you can do also is go up on the rate, and this is going to give you that kind of a vibrato. This is something that this pedal can do. You can enter kind of to the kind of a Leslie, I wouldn't say Leslie, but that kind of a vibe. If I keep the rate down and play the clip, it's going to sound cool. But if I go up, it's going to sound more organish, right? If I go up, it's going to start, getting that Leslie vibe. And if we turn everything off, it sounds like that. It's the magic of effects. Alright, so let's just break it down. In my case, I want to use one single oscillator for this bass. I'm going to just turn this on, and I'm going to go to a square bass, which is, cool. Now, this thing is famous for its bass, so I'm going to leave it on 16 because the MIDI I'm going to be playing is rather low. And if I play something, it's going to sound like that. Now, in this case, I'm just going to use one single oscillator. Now, when you bring more oscillators and maybe you put them on the same frequency, you're going to start getting a little bit of that, that phasing going on. And at some point, if you put this super close like that, you might be getting a little bit of phase cancellation at some point, which sometimes is not that good. Now, it depends on what you want. Right, so this is too steady. So I'm going to just leave this one on and this one off. The one is going to be on, and two, it's going to be off. And then we're going to low pass and no modulation. We need to cut a lot more frequencies. Now, since we are cutting a low and we want a bass, and I'm going to put it around 3, just around 3. Of course, we want some movement, and I'm going to be adding maybe resonance to 2. And already sounds like sounds like a sub bass. Now we want a little bit of movement. So I'm going to bring around 2. Now on the decay, we want not a super long bass. It needs to be kind of a shorter bass. So I'm going to maybe put it right there. So on the sustain, I'm going to go and put it to 2. That is going to sound fine. And notice that we get a little bit more bite. It's not that subby anymore. So right here, you can choose what you can do. You can turn this off. It's going to sound a little bit more darker. You're going to get more bite. And then if we turn both on, this of course is going to do a little bit more. So you're going to get a different sound of a bass. Now in this case, I'm just going to leave this one off. Now in terms of this one, I'm going to leave both off because if I turn this on and I move the decay, we are going to have some release. Now it depends on the bass that you want to create, that's fine, but in this case, I want to create kind of a short bass. So within the decay, you know, with the loudness contour, I'm just gonna leave it right there, almost there. And then the sustain, I'm gonna leave it all the way up. Right, that's fine. If you want to maybe add a little bit of attack, because if it's too clicky, you can get rid of that clickiness. Now, in this case, I'm just gonna want a little bit of that click. Right, so that already sounds like a, you know, it sounds like a nice bass already. So now if I play the clip, you can guess, you know, where that riff or sound comes from. Now, of course, for copyright reasons, I'm not doing the right one. But well, you know, it doesn't sound that bad. It sounds like a good bass. Could fit well in a mix. Now, of course, if you want to make it wider, you just use a chorus. And this is going to give you a different dimension. Now, of course, depends on what you want to do. You don't want to use a chorus. Maybe you want to use a chorus or maybe a reverb. Now, the reverb is too long. Maybe we can make it shorter, and I'm using a room reverb. So if it's too long, you go down the time and you can make it darker. And of course, you're going to do a little bit of less of reverb. It already sounds good. Now again, if you want to make the bass wider, you can use the chorus. And if you're using on a mix, you can just make everything below 500 Hertz mono. Because if the bass is super stereo, it's just not going to help you. Now it sounds nice. It doesn't sound that bad. Now, what I would like to do, I would like to add a little bit of saturation. This is going to give us an extra edge. So I'm going to use this pedal. This pedal is a do-it-yourself kit. So this comes from a company called ATP from Argentina. They sell you the kit. They give you everything organized with the instructions, and then you assemble the pedal. And this one is based on the Blues Breaker. It's a Blues Breaker clone. So it's not super aggressive type of distortion. It's more like a saturation and boost pedal. But this is going to give us a little bit extra. So if I go and play the clip again, always maybe a saturation plugin, and I'm going to get rid of the chorus for now. A little bit of distortion and saturation is just going to give you an extra edge, especially with bass. So if I bring it down, of course you need to adjust the levels. So right now it sounds pretty much the same. But if I do a little bit of drive, notice that we get a little bit more. Now, if you go a lot more, you're gonna get a lot more. But maybe just there and right here with the tone is gonna help you to shape the sound a little bit more. Now, if you look at the spectrum, maybe I'm gonna leave the tone right here at the bottom. And on the level, I'm gonna go a little bit up. Now, if I bring the drive up, I want you to look at the spectrum. How all the frequencies are reacting. If I turn it off, notice that all the mid frequencies are just kind of disappearing. So this is going to help you to, you know, give you that. Since this is not a distortion, it's more like a saturation or maybe kind of a boost. It's just going to help you to get a little bit more harmonics. That's all. It's just a little bit of help. Right. So that's it. Now, of course, remember, if you want to make it bigger, you can bring the chorus in and just, you know, make it super wide. Maybe rate down, and that's it. Okay, so let's just break it down. This is going to be very simple. Now we want to slow ramping up. So everything is going to happen right here. Since we want to slow ramp up, I'm going to go to the attack and I'm going to go all the way up. I'm going to make it really slow. Now the decay all the way up, it doesn't matter. I'm going to go to the sustain, everything all the way up. Now on the envelope, same thing. I'm going to go all the way up on the attack and all the way up on the sustain. Now we want that tail, and at some point we are going to be cutting this. So now we play a key, and I'm playing it right now, and notice that the frequency is growing. Now we are not doing a lot in terms of the oscillators, right? So I'm gonna go maybe all the way up on this volume. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to 4. So I want the high frequencies right here, because later I'm gonna be opening this, and this is gonna be this frequency. Everything else is gonna be the low frequency. So if it's super loud, it's gonna be in the way. So I'm gonna leave it right there. Now then we need the lows, right? Now in this one I'm gonna select maybe a narrow pulse. This one I go super narrow. I'm gonna turn it on and go with volume up, and we start to get that kind of a drone-ish kind of a sound. But I'm gonna go low. And on the last one I'm gonna do the same thing, but in this case I'm just gonna keep it a song, just because I can. And then I'm gonna go to 32s. And you know, we get that sound. No, it doesn't sound bad. It sounds like a drone already. Now, I'm released the keys. I'm not pressing anything. Notice that this is still going because everything is just super long. Now, you can kill it by doing this and then enabling it, and then you can play again. So I'm gonna leave it on for now. In the case how bright this should sound in terms of the keyboard control, I'm just gonna leave this one all the way off, and I'm gonna turn this one on. This is brighter. This one is not so much. I like this one a little bit more because I'm gonna be modulating this. Now I'm gonna go to the emphasis, and I'm gonna do something like that. And on the cutoff frequencies, I'm gonna go super low. Why? Because we're gonna be moving this manually to open it. Right, so for now I'm just gonna leave it there. Then we see if we can modify this, but for now it's just gonna be like that. Now what I want to do, and the whole trick right here, is gonna be doing some filter modulation. So we are gonna modulate the cutoff by some amount. So we're gonna be using this. Now we are gonna be all the way to the LFO, right here, all the way to the LFO. And if we wanted to, we can do even do frequency modulation. So I'm gonna turn it on. So now, of course, how fast? Super fast. And as soon as I go up, notice that we get that sound. Let me open that a little bit more. So we are doing, of course, modulating the cutoff super fast, and at the same time we are going and modulating the frequency super fast. So we're kind of entering into the kind of a frequency modulation territory right here. Not there, but you know, almost. So that's it. That's pretty much the sound. Now, when you release the keys, you will need to cut it at some point because it's going to take a long time to die. Now, everything else is going to happen on the effects, of course. So this one, we are going to leave it on hold, and we're going to leave it a super aggressive reverb. And we are going to be able to hear in a few seconds how it sounds. So just the reverb gives us that sound. So while you hold the key, of course, what I was doing, I was modulating this. And as you go, oh, sorry for that, I just bumped the camera. If you go up, this one, you're gonna get that frequency, that cutoff modulation. And you can create some kind of an ambience, or you know, something going on in the background. And right now I'm just holding a key, but you can use it with the amount of contour, just like you saw on the presentation, on the intro of this, you know, of this patch. Now the other trick is gonna be using the chorus to make it super wide, because right now it's just not super wide. This is just gonna make it wider. How much? Well, depends it's completely up to you. You can go up on the rate, and this is going to give you that more kind of a more modulation. And then what I'm using is a delay, but the delays could be a ping pong or a pan delay. So it's going to move to the left and the right. So if I turn it on, especially when we go to higher frequencies and then go back, you can hear it moving to the left and the right. Right now I'm holding a key, so let me just do play and do it with you know, let me just outsource that that single key. So of course when we start, what I did is just go up on the LFO so we can get a little bit of that frequency and that cut of modulation. And when we open, then we go down. We just create some kind of a motion right there. And at the same time, you can go down on this one. But it's completely up to you, you know, what you want to do. You can even create that kind of effect, just tiny variations on the delay to give you a glitch. That's it. That's the whole patch. Pretty simple. So I'm going to be playing a key and I'm going to leave this one on, right? So when we go up on this one, of course, at some point, the delay, you know, it's just going to move from left to right. So when I release the keys, maybe when you release it, it's going to be kind of on that spot. It's going to be super bright. So when you go down and release the keys, you turn it off and you hear the modulation, you know, you hear the delay doing its job. Alright, so let's just break it down. What we want to do, an kind of an FM. We want to enter to the FM territory. So we're going to use the oscillator 1 and the oscillator 2, but the third one, since it can go to LFO, but it can also go to, you know, oscillator rate, we're going to be frequency modulating the 1 and the 2 with the third one. So, okay, so first of all, just trying to kind of get some sound out of this. I'm going to get the 1, I'm going to get the 2 first. And I'm going to go all the way up. And I'm going to maybe select the square right here. And I'm going to go right there to maybe select the narrow pulse. And maybe on this one, I'm going to go to 4. And this one, I'm going to keep it on 16. So right from the start, we get a kind of a lead sound right from the scratch. So we are not going to do any modulation. If you want to do saturation, that's fine. You can. I'm going to do something like that with the pedal. Right now on this one, I'm going to just turn it on and I'm going to leave this one off. So it's going to be a little bit better for, you know, for leads. So, okay. So what about this? Well, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do something like that, maybe. If you want to have a tail, of course, you're going to need to enable this on. In this case, I'm going to turn it off and I'm going to leave this one on because I want to use the decay of the filter. Now, on the attack, I'm going to leave it all to nothing. And then on the decay, I'm going to go around maybe between 600 and 200-ish, let's say. And the sustain all the way up. And right here at the bottom, you know, on the filter, maybe I'm going to leave it below 2. You know, that sounds nice. Now, maybe this, I'm going to put it to 2 and a little bit of emphasis so we can hear something going on. And I'm going to, of course, do a little bit of modulation. So this is going to give you a lead. Of course, it's not super aggressive. You can even do a little bit of attack so you can get that wow. Let me just do a little bit more. You know, it sounds nice, but you know, it lacks a little bit of something. So we're going to do that FM. So we are going to go and enable the modulation. So when we do on, we are going to be able to use this. So right now, this button, it's right here on this side. You know, it says LFO. That's cool. That's fine because we care about this knob this time. We are going to be not using the LFO. We're going to go the other way and we're going to use the oscillator number 3. In this case. Now, then right here, it needs to be on oscillator 3. So, of course, right now, if we don't do anything and I play something, nothing is going to happen. But as soon as we go up, notice that the tone changes. All right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to 32. So this is going to be low. So if it goes super fast, we'll still, you know, doing a little bit of modulation. And if I go to maybe LFO rates on the last one, we can hear, you know, the depth, the modulation. But this is not what we want. What I want to do maybe is in 32s. And this is going to give us a little bit more of an aggressive sound. Maybe I'm going to go up on this one, maybe less filter. Right, so that's, kind of sounds cool. Now maybe it's just too bright. Right, so that's fine. Maybe a little bit of attack. Right, so that sounds vintage. That's a vintage sound. Maybe a little bit more emphasis. Let's see what happens with the modulation. Right, that's cool. And right now, it's the key step and the mod wheel. Now, of course, it sounds good, but it lacks something. So when you feel that it's good, but it's lacking something, it's the effects. Now, maybe you're wondering, okay, I don't like to use effects. Well, effects is like 30% of the sound. And it's not just about synthesizers. It's with any other instrument. If you don't add effects, you're missing something. If you grab an electric guitar and you plug it to an amp, but you're not using any reverb and maybe no delay or no overdrive or no saturation, it's gonna lack a little bit of something. It's gonna sound super raw. Well, this is the same thing. We have the main goods, what generates the sound, and it sounds good, but then we need to add a little bit of something extra to make it sound, a little bit better. In this case, it sounds super cool. Now remember, we are doing this with the frequency modulation. If not, it sounds really dull. Still, with effects, this still will sound cool, but in this case, I want to use this one. Now, what happens if we add a reverb? Now, in this case, I'm going to use a modulated reverb. So it's going to add a little bit of modulation. It's going to make it maybe a little bit just wider. And I'm going to do a little bit more. Going to make it darker. And I'm going to go to maybe 50 or something like that, 40%. And as soon as I enable, this is going to sound immediately a little bit better. Sounds super vintage. What happens if we add a little bit of a delay? Maybe a ping pong, something that, it's moving from left to right. It's giving us, again, that movement and depth. And it sounds super cool, right? So effects is like 30 or even more percent of the actual final sound. Now, I feel it's good. It is a little bit kind of too dynamic for me, so I'm going to be adding a little bit of saturation, a little bit of overdrive. And I'm doing, I don't know, what am I doing? A little bit of tone, maybe 50%. Maybe we're gonna put everything on 50%. And the voice, I'm gonna leave it all the way down because I like that voice. And volume, 50%. And as soon as we enable this, everything is gonna change. And it's just gonna take it to a different place. Now, of course, if it's too aggressive, you go down on the drive. Maybe there, and I'm gonna add a little bit of tone because it's making it darker. And it's giving us that extra, you know? Maybe a little bit of more tone because I'm losing. There we go. Without the drive, it sounds good. And of course, maybe it's this one is too loud, but it lacks, a little bit of body. So this is, it's saturating. It's just compressing. So whenever you add an overdrive, something like that, just something that sounds cool, and you want more body, more. Just an overdrive pedal, even, you do a little bit of drive, is going to give you that extra something. Right. Okay, so let's just break it down. So what we want to do, we want to play a key, and when we play a key, we want for the sound to go up and up and up and up. Now, of course, at some point when I release the key, I want the pitch to go down. Now, if we use an LFO to control the pitch, at some point the LFO, if it's, we are pressing the key for too long, it's just going to restart. So it's much better to use, an envelope, right? So we are going to use some patching right now. But first, we need to kind of select what we want to do. I'm going to leave this one right here. I'm going to go to 32s, I'm going to go to 32, and I'm going to go to 32 because we're going to go from lows to super highs. Now everything is going to be at center at this, and I'm going to maybe select on this one a triangle, and on this one I'm going to go and do a pulse, and on this one I'm going to make it a triangle. Okay, so what else can we do? Well, of course, we need some sound, and for now I'm just going to bring the number 1 and just turn it on, and let's see how this sounds. It sounds super low. That's fine. So let's bring the other ones. And I'm gonna turn this one on, and I'm gonna leave it around there. Now the volume is completely relative to you and what you're using. All right, so I'm gonna leave it around 7. I feel that that's fine. Now I need some noise as well, so you could use pink or you can use white. I'm gonna use pink noise because it's less intrusive. So if I go higher, we can hear it out of there. So I'm going to leave it right there at the middle. And now we could bring a little bit of saturation just to do a little bit of overload, just like that. If you do too much, it's going to sound like that. But maybe I'm just going to keep it there. Okay. So now what do we need to do? Well, we need to do that ramping up. So we need to set up the envelopes. So in my case, I'm going to use a decay because when we release the keys, we want to hear that going down. So we need to hear this from the envelope, and we need this on the filters. So on the attack is a slow ramping up. So this is going to go very slowly up. Now at some point, of course, we need some decay, which is how it's going to go down when we release it. And maybe around there, it's fine. And for now, the sustain is going to be all the way down. You just want to hear the up, and when we release the keys, it's going to take this much to go down. And in terms of the, the envelope, the filter, I'm going to go maybe all the way up on the decay, all the way down on the sustain, no attack. And I'm going to do a little bit of contour, maybe like 3 or something like that. A little bit of resonance. I'm going to go at 4, maybe. Let me just see. There we go. 4. And this one, I'm going to make it like that, because if not, it's just going to be super bright. Now, the filter mode is still going to be low, and we are going to be doing some modulation as well. When we move and we modulate it with that, then I'm going to go right there, and I'm going to turn this one on and turn this one on. All right, so that's it. Now, if I do something, it's going to sound like that. It's going to start growing at some point, and it's going to stay there. And then when I release it, I want it to go down. That's what we want. Okay, so now the trick is, of course, that we want to go up in pitch. And right now, we are just not doing that. So, okay, so what we can do, we can say that we can use either this envelope or this envelope to control the voltage, the pitch right here. So we can use the loud contour, which is this one. And this one will instruct, what are we going to be doing? 1 by octave. So this is going to go really low, and it's going to grow up in pitch. It's going to grow up, grow, and keep growing because I'm still pressing a key. And when I release it, it's going to go back. Well, let me adjust the cable. Maybe I brought the wrong cable. Okay, so at some point, we want some kind of a modulation when we grow, when we hear the sound grow, because, why not? And right now, let me just adjust the volumes just a little bit more. So what we can do, we can use the modulation that we are using right here. And since we are doing some kind of a filter kind of modulation, we can use the LFO. This one needs to be on. And we can use maybe a triangle, or we can use a square. But the trick is that, of course, we need to use some depth. If we don't do any depth, nothing is going to happen. And this is... We get it? And it's kind of a moving like that. Well, in this case, you can use the triangle, but what I want to use a square. And I'm going to leave it around 3, around there. And the depth is going to be around 6 or 7. Depends on, how aggressive you want it to be. And it's going to do open, close, open, close, open, close. And when we release the keys, it's just going to do the same thing. Now, the trick is that what I want to do, I want to play a key. And when the sound starts to grow, I want to just make it go faster. And of course, when we reach the critical point, and I release the keys, then I go back and just go back to, you know, where we started, which is 3 or 4, maybe 3. I'm gonna leave it in 3. So of course this sounds very good, but you know, with effects it's gonna sound a little bit better. All right, so first I'm gonna bring the reverb. Just with the reverb is gonna sound cool. But play something. Right, so you know, with the reverb sounds good on whole. Maybe after everything it's just 50%, the tone and everything else. Of course you can make it super big, it's still gonna sound good. Now, what else can we do? We can add a little bit more something extra with the delay, because some point when we play the key, it's gonna grow up. Of course, there's gonna be we're gonna get a big sound. So when I release the keys, I want to hear this, you know, the repetitions at the end. So I'm gonna enable this, and for now, I'm just gonna keep it on analog. You can use a ping pong if you wish. That's gonna, you know, give you the from left to right or anything you want. Maybe digital is going to be a little bit too intrusive. The analog, the repetitions are just a little bit darker. So I'm going to keep this one. And just to make the sound a bit wider, I'm just going to use the chorus. Now, there's no need to use this. I'm using this because we are hearing this alone. Sometimes when you are just creating sounds, and this happens when you buy synths, for example, your plugins or something like that, you buy them, and you get this amazing sounds. They sound super cool. And then you put them on a mix and they just, you know, they don't sound that cool. They take a lot of space and you need to start cutting. And the thing is that everything's kind of a super hyped because it sounds better alone. So some things sound good alone, but in the mix, they're not going to sound that good. So this is the case. I'm bringing the chorus just to make it sound cool alone. It's just going to sound better. But then in the mix, maybe you're just going to need to get rid of the chorus, or maybe make it mono. In this case, it's stereo. Maybe make it mono. That's just going to, you know, help your mix. And in the case of this one, I'm going to maybe keep it right there. Not super fast chorus. And everything just maybe like there, not too much, just to make it wider. That's it. So if I play something right now, it's wide, and we can hear the repetitions as well. And if I release it, we get this one. Now, of course, this is a little bit too aggressive. It's completely up to you. You can go down in the mix, and I guess the time, it's fine for now. Just gonna leave it right there. And the repetitions, yeah, I believe that's fine. You know, maybe you can go even, you know, a little bit down. It's completely up to you. Or maybe when you release the keys, just play with a delay. Since this is an analog delay, you can get some kind of artifacts from there. Now the trick is, again, when we go up, we want to modulate this by hand. So I'm gonna play the clip, and I'm gonna do play. Almost reaching the end. And when we are done, we go down. Okay, so let's break it down. So always starting from a default patch. What we want to do a sus chord, let's say. So, okay, so first, of course, we are not doing anything. I'm going to go right here. And again, we are using a default patch. I'm going to go bring the volume up on this one. So is it always a good idea, especially with this synth, or actually any synth, where you don't see what your tuning is, you will need to get a tuner pedal. And I'm going to show you on the screen a tuner. So if I press a C, a low C, we can see that this oscillator is a C. So if I go to this one, what I want to do, I want to make this a different C, a different key. So if I go there, we're going to start shifting and shifting and shifting. And at some point, if you think about it, we can do a C, E, G. So if I do a C, and I'm going to need to put it right there until we get an E. So now we have a C and we have an E, right? So I'm going to turn this one off. This one is a C. This one is an E. So I'm going to turn that one off, and I'm going to go and bring this one, and this one needs to be a G because we are doing C, E, G. Everything is off, but this one is on. So we need to go all the way to G. Almost there. There we go. All right, but that's fine. So now you can keep it on CEG, but in my case, what I want to do, I want to shift this one to, instead of a E, I want to use an F. So I'm gonna keep going up until I get an F. And if you think about that, it's a sus. So I'm gonna go right there, C, just make sure, F, and then we get a G. All right. So now we're gonna need to select this. Now this is completely up to you. I'm gonna make this one on 4 foot. This one needs to be on this position. That's fine. We are not gonna really use that. And this one I'm gonna keep it in 16. So this one's gonna be a little bit lower, and this one is gonna be a little bit higher. The knobs, the range, it's completely up to you. Depends on what you want to do. Now, in terms of the waveforms, I'm going to keep it a saw, and I'm maybe going to do a narrow pulse just to shift the sound a little bit. And since this one is higher, it's not going to, stay in between of the first one. All right, so this is the first, this is the second one, and this is the third. Oh, and the glide's all the way up. We're going to use the glide, but right now, it sounds like that. If I do a little bit more brightness, and that already sounds cool by itself, right? But in this case, I want to create that kind of a pad, or maybe a pad sound. So I want, a slow and kind of a, I don't want to say dreamy, but, it's kind of a slow sound, washy sound. So I'm going to leave the cutoff maybe like there, something like that. Maybe we can adjust later. I'm going to do a little bit of a contour, maybe around 3. And sometimes you can hear that my voice goes out of the microphone. It's because, of course, I'm moving and trying to see all the knobs. I have the camera and I have a screen just, watching everything I'm filming. But sometimes it's just, not that easy. So I'm going to use this amount of contour. I'm going to leave this one off. This one, it's going to be, we are going to do no modulation in this one. Maybe we can change this later. And I'm going to go and bring this one to on. It's going to be a little bit brighter. And the second one is going to be off. And I do want decay. So, just that. Now, since this one needs to be kind of a pad, where you're going to need to do some kind of attack, I'm going to leave it right at half. And this one is going to be maybe around 6. And then we're going to get that. Right, so I'm going to put the sustain, and whenever you create a pad or something that has some kind of a, transitioning in and out, it depends on your, what you want to do, right? On your track. How much time this should be taking. So this is just how I'm doing this. But then if you want to use the same patch on a track or do something like that, you're gonna need to adjust the times. Right, so for that already sounds good. Now what we can do, we can add a little bit of glide, a lot of glide. And every time that we go lower or higher, we're gonna hear that, kind of a gliding. Let me go up in volume. And this one as well, and this one as well. And that's pretty much, pretty much the sound. Now, also what we can do a little bit of modulation. We are already on the LFO section right here. Now what we can do, maybe I'm gonna do a rate of something like that. And if I start moving this, we enable this, and we're gonna modulate this control. Now in this case, I'm just going to keep it down, and we can control this. And I'm doing it with my mod wheel. I'm using a key step in this case. And at some point, when we play something, we go up and down. Right. Now, again, remember, this is completely up to you. This is pretty much the patch. It's pretty simple. Now, how bright it's going to be up to you. If you want it brighter or just darker, you're just going to need to move this or move this. Or the cutoff, it's completely up to you. In this case, I don't want it to be that bright, so I'm going to leave it right there. Okay, so we need to talk about the effects. This is like the 50% of the patch. Since this is kind of a pad, we need to bring some, of course, reverb and maybe delay and maybe a chorus or something that, creates some kind of a modulation or push the sound to the back, because it's a pad. It's not in front of the mix. So I'm going to bring reverb, and I'm just going to use kind of pretty much the same thing. It's going to be on hall, and everything is at half. So, of course, you can go crazy. So maybe just gonna go more, and maybe go to a brighter. If I go way too much, of course, it's all reverb. But you know, it's completely, again, up to you. In this case, I'm just gonna leave everything right here, almost in 50%. Now, in terms of the delay, what I want to do with the delay, I'm gonna use a pan delay. So every time I play a key, we're gonna hear moving from left to right. So if I enable this, so we can hear the delay, you know, going, the repetitions, going from left to right. And notice the speed, it's not super fast. There we go. Now, the mix and the repeats is completely up to you. If you want to make it longer, it's just gonna, you know, be a little bit more kind of a present. In this case, I want it present, but not that much. I want something, you know, and then fade out. And to make it, you know, again, wider, we can use a chorus. And now, with the chorus, if you want to add more modulation, you can use the rate. If you go all the way up on the rate, it's going to start kind of a moving. Maybe this is easier if we make it brighter. Right? It's going this fast. Now in this case, I don't want that. I'm just going to leave it maybe around there. I'm going to keep this just to make it brighter. I'm going to get a different course to record this series, because this one is a very specific course. I wanted something, you know, more kind of a, you know, not maybe with no bass and treble, so it's something more normal. So that's it. That's the sound. Maybe again in my patch it's going to be a little bit darker, something like that. And you know, something like that. Now, of course, you can change your settings as much as you want, and this is the whole point of, you know, recording all of this. I could just show you the patch, no talking, you know, no talking video, just show you the sound, put some, you know, some values right here so you can see the settings on your screen, and then move to the next one. I could just do that, but the whole thing is just, you know, letting you know, okay, so we are shifting this just to make it sus, make it brighter, or make it, you know, darker. The times depends on what you want to do, why we are doing this delay, why we are adding this, what happens if we go on the rate. So I'm just doing all of this because this is a kind of a teaching video, right? It's not again, just a showing patches video. So that's, you know, the whole point of this, and maybe you like it. Now, if you like it, of course, leave a comment. This is the first video I make about this. If you like it, just leave a comment and put a like. And I know that you like this, and I can do more. Kind of prepare like 3 or 4 with different synths. But if no one likes this and no one is watching, why, you know, keep on doing it. All right, so let's break it down. So what I want to do kind of a pluck. And now, of course, I'm going to do something, but you can, you know, change some settings and adjust to whatever it is that you want to do. So we always start from a default patch. You know, we get nothing. And if I turn the first one on and I'm going to go about 8, we get that. So that's fine. So in this case, I'm going to go to 8. Just to, you know, to keep it simple. And I'm going to keep it in 16 on the second one. I'm going to turn it on and I'm going to go all the way in. And I want something narrow. I'm going to go right there. So on this one, I'm going to keep it on 32. This is going to be the low. And I'm just going to maybe keep it on right here on a square. And this one is going to be a square as well. Right. So maybe we're gonna go right here and then change it and see what happens. So if we play something, we need to turn them on. And notice that this one, it's a little bit, you know, less with the volume. And if I turn that one on, it doesn't sound like a Pluck. So now, of course, we need to take care of the envelopes. All right, so I'm going to keep it low. I'm going to no modulation. I'm going to just turn this one on, and this one is going to be off. Right? So I'm going to keep no right here, nothing on the filter decay, you know, off and off. It's because if I do something and we add a decay, we're going to have that tail, but I just don't want that tail. You can turn it on if you wish. And we'll leave this one in the loudest contour. Since this is a Pluck, we need something short, right? So the sustain is going to be all the way down. And on the decay, I'm just going to do 10, maybe. Because we want to Pluck. And then, you know, you get that Pluck. If you do something like that, That's fine. It's not going to happen. No, nothing is going to happen. But as you go up, you're going to add that release. In this case, I want to keep it short. Now, when you play it, you need to start adjusting this. You get the click. And as soon as you get something, then you need to decide if that's how long your plug is going to be. In my case, I'm going to leave it around 10. Okay, so then of course we need to do a little bit of contour. I'm gonna maybe leave it around 2. And on the decay, again, this needs to be short. Maybe we can do it more resonant. If you go all the way to the top, more than 8, notice that you have a peak right here, right there. Maybe I'm gonna go lower. Can you see on the spectrum the peak? So it's gonna be, you're gonna get that one. So if you don't want it, of course, you're gonna need to go lower than that. But in this case, I'm just gonna keep it around there. Now, in terms of the filter, I'm gonna maybe just put it right there in between. Alright, so again, sounds like a plug. If you want it more bright, make it brighter, you need to adjust this. And I want to do a little bit of decay. So I want that peak, maybe that was too much. So if you do a lot, of course, you're gonna start getting that. So I'm gonna leave it around, a little bit less than 10. So I can get that peak. If I don't do anything, it's gonna sound super dark, but I want, a little bit of movement. And that's it. Now, okay, let's go up in volume on this one. That's fine. I'm gonna leave it around there. And okay, so that's it. That's pretty much, it's a plug. You don't need to do a lot. It's just that. Now, of course, remember that you can make it shorter, you can make it brighter, and you can adjust this if you don't like that peak and keep it, short, super short. In this case, I like the peak because this is going to kind of sound a little bit better when we add effects. Right, so I'm going to keep it around 2 and maybe this around there. All right. Okay, so now we need to add some effects. Now, of course, we can make it wider just by bringing the chorus. And immediately it sounds much better. I'm going to make it wider and keep the rate around there. And if I bring a reverb, now the reverb, it's going to sound cool, but it's maybe too much. So sometimes it's, you want to keep the reverb in control. Maybe control the tail or maybe make it darker. I'm using a hole in this case. Maybe we could use a room or something shorter or spring. But in this case. Now, what's really going to shine is going to be the delay. Because, of course, we have a short sound. It's very short. So in between, we maybe can, add something, add something a little bit more with the delay. So if I do so, if I play this and I'm on analog, which means that the repetitions are darker, it adds that something, but you need to really adjust the time. Now, I'm going to be going to the DAW because, of course, everything is kind of, I'm recording this with the DAW, and I have a click track. So let me just bring the click. So that is the click. So notice that repetitions are a little bit off. So what you can do with this one, and this is the best cheap reverb, the delay I could find. And of course, if you have a Strymon or something like that, it's just gonna be better. But with this one, when you hold it and it goes yellow, you can just tap tempo. And now it's gonna, match the tempo a little bit better. That's a little bit better. Right, so I'm gonna leave it out like that, and I have a clip right here, so I'm gonna just kill the metronome, and I'm gonna play the clip. All right, there's all the heavy lifting that this is doing. If I turn it off, it sounds very lonely. Now, of course, we can go down in the mix and just make it in the background. And this is analog, it's not stereo, it's not ping pong. If you go to maybe a pan delay, it's just gonna move from left to right. It sounds, a lot better. Now, it depends on what you want to do. Now, remember that you can change this, the settings, of course. So you can make it darker, depends on what you need to do. And this is doing a lot for us. If I go down on this one, this just sounds much darker. This is kind of give us that initial transient. That's why it's super short. Now, there you go. So that's the sound. Now, all right, so that's the patch. You know how important is the delay. Now, in terms of the effects, and I'm showing you this, and I tried to record this. I have a different reverb I use. It's just a different reverb. I'm not going to tell you which brand it is. I have a different delay I always use. But I didn't want it to show you with expensive pedals because this is going to give you the wrong impression. It's just going to maybe tell you that you need expensive pedals just to get a good sound, and you don't. Of course, if you're asking yourself, is this better than a Strymon? Of course not. Of course not. But this is going to give you, a good reverb for a reasonable price, and it's a Boss. It's going to last forever, pretty much. Is this better than a Strymon? No, but this is like the cheapest delay with a tap tempo, and it has a looper included. So yeah, if you are on a budget, these ones are going to get the job done. You don't need a Strymon. That's why I'm not recording with expensive pedals. I don't want to give you the wrong impression. If you have the money and you can get a Strymon or maybe the IQ multimedia, the delay or the reverb, even though for the delay I'm hearing a lot of complaints with the first batch of the IQ multimedia, so I cannot recommend it. But this one is just great. It's super cheap. It gives you a lot of types. Even has, tap tempo. So it's just fantastic. You don't need to spend a lot of money to get, good effects. Now, this one, it's a little bit different. It's the only course I have. I'm a more guitar player than a keyboard player. I, do a lot of guitar. And this one is great for guitars. And it's also great for synths. But for guitar, it's just like a classic. It's just one of the most classic course pedals out there for guitar. So maybe I'm going to be getting a different course to show you here because this one is not that cheap and I don't want to give you the wrong impression. But this is the only course I own right now. I can even show you all of this going through the DAW and using cheap plugging. And we're still going to be getting a great sound. And it's because the sound source needs, sounds good. If the sound source sounds good, whatever you do with here on the effects side is going to sound good. Now, if you spend more money, of course, with the Strymon or the other Strymon from the timeline, you can have more options and more tweaking. So, you have more possibilities. That's the main difference. But they sound good. They get the job done. All right, so let's just break it down. All the patches we did were not basses. Maybe we did just one, and was kind of a subby bass. So this is a great bass machine, pretty much. So let's do just one more bass, just because is a great bass machine. So in this case, I'm gonna go in layers. I'm gonna bring the number 1, and of course we always start from a default patch. I'm just gonna bring this one up, just the first oscillator. Now I'm gonna keep it on maybe a narrow pulse or something like that. We can even go to square. I'm gonna give it a narrow, no, super narrow, and I'm gonna keep it on 16. Now I have a clip right here, and as I play it, I'm gonna be playing this, and of course I need to turn this one on. It's gonna sound like that. Now, of course, it doesn't sound that bad, but we can do much better, and it's because we are not doing anything of this. So I'm gonna go and leave this one off to low. This one right here, everything off, and this one are gonna be on, and this one are gonna be on. Now, of course, I want to make the bass a little bit, remove that click, and I want to make it longer. So just like doing that, just gonna be longer. Now it's too long. The sustain is just too much. So you're gonna need to adjust the decay and the sustain to make it shorter. Now we are not doing anything on the envelope, so I'm gonna bring it down, and immediately it sounds a little bit more pleasing, but it's super subby. I'm gonna bring a little bit of the resonance, maybe 2, 3, and now we need to do amount of contour, and this is gonna kind of make the sound. Can you hear that click? So we want a little bit of that, but we want it to be a little bit longer. And now it sounds like a super cool bass, and we are just using one single oscillator. I'm gonna go to 200s and maybe a little bit more, 200 and something. And on the sustain side, I'm gonna just maybe leave it on 2. Now Now, the sustain is going to be completely up to you and depends on the bass that you want. Now, if you want to make the bass a little bit shorter on the sustain and shorter on the decay, well, that's what you need to do to adjust it to your track. In this case, I kind of like it right there, right in the middle, above 200s, sustain on 2, and then this one, it's going to be around 6 or 7, around that. Now, this one already sounds like a good bass. We could maybe bring a little bit of room reverb. I'm using a little bit of room. Notice that the level is not a lot. If I bring this, it's just going to sound like that. It's just way too much. And this is a bass. So I'm going to keep it low. Now, of course, we can bring a chorus and just make the sound or the bass wide. And it sounds nice, but maybe on production, it's just gonna not work that good because it's a bass. Unless you have a fundamental going, maybe you can record the first oscillator, make it mono, and then if you add something at the top, make it just wider. Now I'm gonna keep the width, narrow, and then maybe I'm gonna leave it right there. And that, already sounds good. Now, of course, now we get the lows, and it sounds fine. Now, what you could do if you wanted to, you could bring more things to the equation, because right now we are just using one single oscillator. Now, if I bring the second oscillator on the same frequency, they're going to be clashing. So I'm going to go to 4, and then going to make it, I don't know, maybe a pulse. And then I'm going to turn it on, and immediately it's going to give us that sound, that kind of a 90s bass. That sounds super cool. Now we can even go further. Maybe I'm going to go to the number 2. And this one, maybe I'm gonna keep it a saw. We can even go maybe to a square. But I'm gonna bring it in and get, that range. And you can see it on the spectrum what this is doing. Now, of course, if I turn this one off, we lose that. And you need to decide your levels right here. I want more bass, of course, and I want a little bit of this too. If I turn them off, it changes the bass completely. It's a different bass. Right, so that's fine, let's try. And maybe it's too much, I much prefer a saw. Okay, so that's fine. Now always check that, maybe they're in tune. And that's it, that's gonna be the patch, a very simple bass. But you have like 3 basses. This is not a bass, this is the upper part. And then we bring the low and we make it a nice merge. So that's it, so that's the patch. Okay, so let's just finish with the bank and finish with an FX. So, okay, so let's just build it. Now, the whole trick is going to be right here, what we do right here and what we do on the envelopes. So the oscillators are going to be pretty simple. So in this case, I'm going to keep this one on. It was, on by default, but we need to turn it on. By default, it should be off because we shouldn't have modulation on a default patch, but this one needs to be on. So I'm going to leave it on 16, leave the second one on 16, and this one is going to be my lows. So I'm going to go to 32s. So everything is going to be on the middle. And right here, I'm going to select the square. I'm going to go and select the square, and I'm going to go and select narrow square. Not super narrow, the one in the middle. So if I turn the first one on, and then I go to the second one, and then I go to the third one, I'm going to bring everything up. Now, if you want to do a little bit of overload, that's fine. In this case, I'm just going to maybe bring it, but leave it right there, maybe on 6, maybe even a little bit better. Let's see if, if we crank it up, we get something better. And in terms of the envelopes and how this is going to sound right now, it's just going to sound like that. Now, what we want to do, of course, we want to get something kind of kind of an impact at the beginning, and then it needs to go down. And as it goes down, we need to do some kind of a modulation. So in this case, we need some decay, and it's going to be a long decay. I'm going to press a key, and I'm going to sustain it. And when I release it, I want this to fade out. So in this case, I'm going to go to the decay, and I'm going to go and make it full, just to just use something. And the sustain, I'm going to go all the way down. Right, so this one is on, this one is on. I'm gonna keep this one to on, and I'm gonna keep this one to off, right? So, okay, so cool. Now, in this case, we're gonna do something different. I'm gonna be using this modulation. So we're gonna modulate this and modulate the pitch just a little bit. And right now we were using the low pass. We're going to use the high pass, which is something we didn't use so far. So this is going to sound like that. And I'm not pressing a key. Now, of course, when you press a key, it's taking a long time to go down. If this is a little bit annoying, you can turn it off and turn it back on and just going to kill the sound. And you can keep working. Now, okay, so what else? We are going to need to work with this. So we need a little bit of attack. I'm going to go to the 600-ish. Maybe this one, the decay, same 600-ish. And the sustain, I'm going to go to maybe half, something like that. I'm going to start low on this one. I'm going to go there. And I'm going to maybe add a little bit of resonance, maybe around 4. And on the amount of contour, I'm going to go half. And just like, doing this, gonna sound cool. Now remember to turn it off just to kill it. Now this sounds cool, but we need a little bit more. Okay, so we need to do a lot of modulation because right now it sounds super dull. So we need to go to the mod mix. In this case, I'm gonna go all the other way because we want to modulate it with the filter EG. So if we want to use the filter EG, this one needs to be right here. There is no glide. I'm gonna keep this one right there. And on this one, maybe I'm gonna go right there and I'm gonna keep it on a square, right? So we're gonna do some modulation with the filter. So that's why we are selecting it. If I go all the way up and we have filter and filter right here, you need to make sure that you have that. We are gonna have that. And notice the spectrum. As when it starts, it's like something like that. At the bottom on the spectrum. Can you see how it's moving? It's just super different. And with this off, let's just turn it off and just see how it sounds. It's just super dull. So we have no movement, and movement is life. So I'm gonna go all the way up right here. Now, of course, what I want to do, I want to press a key, hold it, and then release it. Now, when we go to the release stage, the decay, the sound is going to start decaying, right? It's going to start fading out. So when I do that, maybe I want to do a little bit of modulation. So that's why we have this mod mix. So right now it's on LFO. So we could use either the filter EG that we use when, of course, the sound starts, or, we can go the other way and use the LFO. So we can use both. Maybe when the sound is decaying, we can use this knob to give us that, modulation at the end when the sound fades out. So if I play it right now, and let me just go maybe here to get that wow. And when it stabilizes, I'm going to release the key. And as the sound dies, I'm going to do that modulation. Maybe I was too aggressive. And of course, just to bring it down, you can go down the decay and just decay the sound a little bit more. If you cut it off, it's just gonna die. You bring this, and then you just turn it off, and it's just gonna die. So maybe it's better to handle it with the decay. Now, of course, this is gonna sound a lot better because it's in effects with a reverb, maybe a little bit of delay. So if I bring the reverb, I'm using a hall. It's on the mids, maybe not too bright, but I'm using, a lot of reverb, so mix of 50%. So it's kind of a lot. So if I bring it, it's gonna sound cool. And as the decay sound decays, we bring the modulation. Right, we know. So that's fine. So now we need to bring a delay. Well, in my case, I'm gonna bring a delay. And this is just gonna make it sound a little bit better, especially when we are decaying the sound. So let me just turn this on. And turn this on. This one, it's maybe there, maybe, I don't know, I believe it's 500, maybe a little bit less. And I'm doing 50% of the mix and 50% of the repeats, but I'm using analog. So the repetitions are going to be a little bit darker. Maybe you could use a ping pong, something like that, so it can move. This case, I believe is fine. And I'm going to bring the chorus, but I'm going to play it first. Can you hear the delay doing its job? And when I release it, the delay, and I made a mistake because this one is off. It needs to be on. So let's do it again. I'm going to go lower key. Hear the delay. And as I release the key, and I'm not pressing a key, we hear the delay doing its job and the reverb. And remember that we can go down to the decay to kill the sound. All right, so that's fine. Now, if you want to make it wider, then you bring a chorus. Let's do it again. I'm gonna release the key. I'm gonna wait for the sound to fade out and bring the modulation in. And if I want to kill the sound before, I lower the decay. And that's the patch. Okay, so hopefully you liked all of this and it was useful for you. And remember, this is the first one I make from this, from this type, creating the patch and the sounds and everything else. So if you like this and you find this useful, add a comment, just comment something or just like the video. That's how I know that you like this and I can just, make more. Maybe because I have a lot of synths. I could do this one with the K2 or an MS-20, or I can do this with a DeepMind, something that has a screen, and we can do a lot, use the unit effects. We can do it with a Hydra synth. I could do this with a lot of synths. Maybe the mini log. Yeah, why not? So if you like this, remember to like. Remember to maybe add a comment just to tell me that you like this and you want me for keep doing this. And remember to subscribe as well. And if you have the money and you would like to buy me a coffee, you can go to the description and you will find a link for PayPal. You have the YouTube thanks, of course. Or maybe you can go to Patreon and be a 1 month patron or something like that, So thanks for watching and see you on the next one.